The old metal sign creaked in the evening breeze as Damon Williams turned the key to lock up his garage for the night. Grease stains covered his work clothes, and his callous hands told a story of 15 years spent bringing dead engines back to life. His little auto shop sat on the edge of what used to be a quiet Detroit neighborhood, but everything changed when they built the massive spaceport right next door. 9-year-old Maya bounced on her toes beside him, her school backpack sliding off one shoulder. She loved coming to the shop after school, asking endless questions about how things worked while her dad finished up with customers. Tonight felt different, though. The ground had been shaking all afternoon from something much bigger than the usual cargo ships. "Dad, look at that thing," Maya whispered, pointing toward the spaceport where a ship the size of 3 city blocks sat smoking and sparking. It looked nothing like the sleek vessels they usually saw. This one seemed wounded, with scorch marks along its silver hull and strange blue lights flickering weakly. Damon had been watching it, too. The ship had crashed down 6 hours ago, sending tremors through half the city. News reports said it was some kind of emergency landing, but nobody knew much else. What caught his attention wasn't the size or the damage, but the sound. Even from a distance, he could hear the irregular rhythm of failing engines. It reminded him of the old Buick that Mrs. Peterson brought in last month, the one everyone else had given up on. A group of beings emerged from the ship, unlike anything Detroit had ever seen. They stood nearly 8 feet tall with blue-tinted skin and wore what looked like uniforms made from liquid metal. Their leader, who seemed to be in charge based on how the others followed him around, looked frustrated, really frustrated. Local officials had gathered near the landing site, along with reporters and curious onlookers kept back by temporary barriers. Damon could see Mayor Johnson talking with the tall blue leader, gesturing toward the city and probably offering help. But the alien's body language made it clear he wasn't interested in whatever the humans were suggesting. "Those guys look angry," Maya observed, always good at reading people, even alien people apparently. "They're stuck," Damon replied, listening to the engine sounds growing more irregular. "Their ship's dying, and they don't know how to fix it." The conversation between the officials and aliens was getting heated. Damon couldn't hear the words, but he recognized the tone. It was the same way some customers talked when they thought his small shop couldn't handle their expensive car problems. The alien leader kept shaking his head and pointing at his ship, then at the city around them, like he was explaining why primitive Earthlings couldn't possibly help with advanced alien technology. Mayor Johnson must have mentioned the local mechanics, because suddenly the alien leader's attention turned toward the auto shops lining the street. His expression changed from frustrated to amused, like someone had just told him a funny joke. He pointed directly at Damon, who was still standing by his garage, and said something that made his crew burst into what could only be described as alien laughter. Even from a distance, Damon could tell they were making fun of him. The pointing, the laughing, the way they looked at his small garage with its hand-painted sign and collection of old tire stacks. He'd seen that look before from plenty of customers who thought a neighborhood mechanic couldn't understand their high-tech hybrid systems. But while the aliens were busy laughing, Damon was busy listening. The sound of their failing engines was getting worse, more desperate. Whatever was wrong with their ship, it was serious. And despite their attitude, he found himself genuinely curious about how their technology worked. Maya tugged on his sleeve. "Dad, why are they being mean?" "They're scared," Damon explained, surprising himself with the realization. When something's broken and you don't know how to fix it, sometimes being mean feels easier than asking for help. The alien leader was still gesturing toward the human mechanics, apparently suggesting it would be just as ridiculous to let them pilot the ship as it would be to let them repair it. His crew thought this was hilarious. But Damon wasn't paying attention to their mockery anymore. He was studying the energy patterns visible through their ship's transparent sections, watching how power flowed through conduits that looked surprisingly familiar. Different materials, different scale, but the basic principles seemed universal. Energy had to flow somewhere, and when it couldn't flow properly, everything started breaking down. Without really thinking about it, he started walking toward the ship. Over the next few days, Damon found himself spending every lunch break walking over to study the alien ship. The blue-skinned beings had set up a work area around their vessel, with tools and equipment that looked like something from a science fiction movie. But what fascinated Damon most was how frustrated they seemed with their own technology. Maya always came with him, carrying her sandwich in a brown paper bag and asking the kind of questions only kids think to ask. "Dad, why do their lights blink like that?" She'd wonder, pointing at the flickering patterns along the ship's hull. "Is it like when our car makes that clicking sound before it won't start?" Her innocent observations often made Damon pause and look at things differently. The blinking lights did follow a pattern, just like the clicking sound his old truck made when the alternator was going bad. Different technology, same basic problem. Something wasn't getting the power it needed. The alien crew had been working around the clock, but their progress seemed slow. Damon could see them arguing among themselves, pointing at diagnostic displays that showed nothing but red warning symbols. Their leader, the one who'd laugh at the human mechanics, looked more tired and worried each day. "They're using the wrong approach," Damon muttered to himself one afternoon, watching them try to force a repair on what was obviously a delicate system. It was like watching someone try to fix a watch with a hammer. Maya looked up from her sandwich. "What do you mean, Dad? See how they keep pushing more power through that main line?" Damon pointed to where several aliens were clustered around a thick conduit that glowed with unstable energy. "But the problem isn't that they don't have enough power. It's that the power can't flow where it needs to go." It reminded him of the time Mr. Rodriguez brought in his old pickup truck. The engine had plenty of power, but a clogged fuel filter meant none of that power could reach where it was needed. The aliens seemed to have the same kind of blockage, but they kept trying to solve it by adding more pressure instead of clearing the obstruction. That night, after Maya went to bed, Damon couldn't stop thinking about what he'd observed. He pulled out some old auto parts from his workshop and started sketching ideas on the back of Maya's homework papers. The alien technology used completely different materials and worked on principles he didn't fully understand, but energy flow was energy flow. Whether it was electricity through copper wire or whatever exotic force powered their ship, it still needed a clear path to travel. The breakthrough came 3 days later, when one of their critical components finally gave up completely. Damon was eating his usual lunch near the ship when alarms started blaring from inside the vessel. The aliens poured out, their leaders shouting orders in their strange language while pointing at displays showing complete system failure. For the first time since they'd arrived, the tall blue leader looked genuinely scared. His crew was arguing loudly, some pointing at the city like they wanted to commandeer human technology, others shaking their heads like that would never work. Damon studied the readings on their external displays. The energy patterns he'd been watching for days had gone completely chaotic. Whatever had been struggling to work was now completely dead. But looking at the way power was trying to reroute itself through other systems, he could see exactly what had failed and why. That evening, he stayed late in his garage, working by the light of a single bulb hanging from the ceiling, using parts from an old transmission, some copper tubing from a radiator repair, and materials from 3 different car batteries. He built something that looked absolutely nothing like alien technology. It was rough, held together with electrical tape and good old-fashioned ingenuity. But it should do the job. The next morning, he walked up to the alien leader with his contraption in a cardboard box. The tall being looked at him with the same dismissive expression he'd worn for days, but desperation had replaced most of the arrogance. "Your main power coupling is burned out," Damon said simply, pulling his device from the box. This should work as a temporary replacement. The alien leader stared at the crude-looking device with obvious disbelief. It looked like junk compared to their sleek technology. But when his own engineers examined it and ran some tests, their expressions changed completely. Not only did Damon's makeshift part work, it actually improved their engine efficiency by 15%. The rough human materials created less resistance than their original components, allowing energy to flow more smoothly through their systems. "Your materials are primitive," the alien leader admitted, speaking to Damon directly for the first time. "But your understanding of energy dynamics is remarkable." Damon just nodded, already thinking about other improvements he could make to their navigation systems. He'd have to work some extra hours to pay Mrs. Johnson for watching Maya, but seeing that ship running smoothly would be worth it. The piercing sound of emergency alarms shattered the peaceful afternoon as Damon was showing Maya how the alien power systems worked. Red lights flashed across every display on the ship, and the tall blue leader came running from inside the vessel with an expression of pure panic on his face. "What's happening?" Maya asked, pressing closer to her father as more aliens rushed around checking instruments and shouting in their strange language. Before Damon could answer, the ship's communication system crackled to life with a desperate human voice speaking in English. "This is Captain Rodriguez of the colony ship New Horizon. We are carrying 40,000 civilians to the Kepler colonies. Our engines have failed completely. We are trapped in the gravity well of a collapsing star. Repeat, we need immediate assistance. We have maybe 18 hours before we're pulled into star." The message played again, and Damon felt his stomach drop. 40,000 people, families, children, maybe even some folks from Detroit who'd signed up for the colony program, and they were going to die unless someone could reach them in time. The alien leader was frantically checking star charts on a holographic display. His crew gathered around him, pointing at different calculations and shaking their heads. One of them, apparently their navigation officer, kept pointing at the same spot on the map, with a dying star pulsed with dangerous red energy. "Can your ship reach them?" Damon asked, even though he could already guess the answer from their body language. The alien leader looked at him with tired eyes. "Yes, we can reach them. Our ship is the only vessel in this system fast enough and strong enough to survive the gravitational forces near a collapsing star. But..." He gestured toward a medical bay where another alien lay unconscious, connected to strange healing devices. "Our primary pilot was injured when our systems failed 3 days ago," the leader explained. "Head trauma from an explosion in the control room. He won't wake up for days, maybe weeks." Maya tugged on Damon's sleeve. "Can't someone else fly the ship?" The alien leader heard her question, and his expression grew even more grim. "Our backup pilot refuses the mission. He says the gravitational forces around a dying star would tear apart even our advanced technology. The rescue would be suicide." As if summoned by the conversation, another alien approached. This one was smaller than the others, with nervous movements and darting eyes. He spoke rapidly in their language, gesturing wildly toward the star charts. Even without understanding the words, Damon could tell this was the backup pilot, and he was terrified. "The gravitational field is too unstable," the backup pilot finally said in broken English, looking directly at Damon. "Ship gets pulled apart. Everyone dies. Cannot risk it." The alien leader slammed his fist against the display in frustration. 40,000 humans will die if we do nothing. But if we fail to rescue, 40,000 humans die plus our crew. The mathematics are impossible. That's when something seemed to click in the leader's mind. He turned to look at Damon with an expression that was half desperate, half amused. "You know, 3 days ago I made a joke. I said maybe your primitive mechanics could pilot our ship too." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Perhaps that joke wasn't so funny after all. The other aliens immediately started protesting. They spoke rapidly in their own language, but their meaning was clear from their gestures and tone. The idea of letting a human pilot their advanced spacecraft was absurd, dangerous, impossible. But Damon had been thinking. For the past week, he'd been studying their ship systems, learning how energy flowed through their engines, understanding the delicate balance of forces that kept such a massive vessel flying. And something the backup pilot said had caught his attention. "You're thinking about this wrong," Damon said quietly, stepping closer to the group of arguing aliens. "Your pilot is thinking like a spaceship operator, worried about following proper flight procedures and staying within safe parameters." The alien stopped arguing and turned to listen. "But this isn't about flying," Damon continued, his voice growing more confident. "This is about understanding forces and finding the path of least resistance. I've been pulling cars out of ditches and tight spots for 20 years. I've extracted engines from crashed vehicles, pulled trucks out of mud holes, even got Mrs. Patterson's car unstuck from her garage after she drove to the back wall." Maya giggled despite the serious situation. She remembered that incident. "The principle is the same," Damon explained, looking directly at the alien leader. "When something's stuck in a bad situation, you don't fight the forces trying to hold it there. You work with those forces Use them to help you instead of fighting against them. That dying star isn't just pulling things toward it. It's creating currents and flows in space-time. If you know how to read those currents, you can ride them instead of being destroyed by them. The backup pilot was shaking his head vigorously, but the leader was studying Damon with new interest. "This is just a bigger tight spot," Damon said simply, "and I've gotten pretty good at finding the easy way out of tight spots." The pilot's chair felt strange under Damon's hands as he settled into position. The alien controls were nothing like a car steering wheel and pedals, but they responded to touch in ways that reminded him of the sensitive throttle on his old motorcycle. Everything hummed with power, waiting for direction. Maya stood behind him in the control room, her small hand resting on his shoulder for comfort. The alien leader had agreed to let her stay, understanding that Damon worked better when his daughter was nearby. The rest of the crew clustered around monitoring stations, their blue faces tense with worry as they watched readouts that showed nothing but danger ahead. "Dad, are you scared?" Maya whispered as the ship began moving away from Earth's spaceport. "A little," Damon admitted honestly, "but scared is okay. Scared keeps you careful." Through the massive viewing window, space looked different than he'd expected. Instead of the empty blackness he'd seen in movies, he could actually see the gravitational forces around a dying star, like heat waves rising from summer pavement. The star itself pulsed with angry red light, throwing off massive solar flares that twisted space around it. The backup pilot sat at a secondary station, monitoring their approach and muttering nervously in his own language. Every few minutes he'd call out warnings about gravitational shear forces and structural stress limits. The alien leader translated the important parts, but Damon was learning to read the ship's responses for himself. "The colony ship is there," the leader said, pointing to a spot on the display where a small blip showed up against the overwhelming energy signature of the dying star. "They're caught in the gravity well, being pulled slowly toward destruction. We have maybe 6 hours before they cross the point of no return." Damon studied the gravitational patterns surrounding the trapped ship. The forces weren't random. They flowed in currents and eddies, just like water around a drain. But unlike water, these currents moved in 3 dimensions, creating layers and streams that a careful pilot could navigate. "Your backup pilot was right about one thing," Damon said, adjusting their course slightly. "If you try to fight these forces head-on, they'll tear any ship apart. But look at how they're moving." He pointed to the display, showing gravitational flows. "See how the strongest currents spiral around the star? If we follow those spirals instead of cutting straight across them, we can use their energy to help us instead of fighting against us." The aliens watched in amazement as Damon began what could only be described as gravitational surfing. Instead of pushing the engines to maximum power and charging straight toward the colony ship, he adjusted their speed and direction to ride the cosmic currents. The ship began moving in long, sweeping arcs that took them deeper into the gravity well than their safety protocols recommended. Warning alarms started sounding, but the ship wasn't being torn apart. Instead, it was moving faster and more efficiently than the aliens had thought possible. Damon's approach reminded Maya of watching her dad work on engines, the same patient attention to how all the parts work together, the same careful listening for changes in rhythm and tone. "The gravitational forces are actually helping us," the alien leader said in amazement, watching his instruments show impossible readings. "Our speed is increasing, but we're using less engine power than normal flight. It's like riding a motorcycle on winding mountain roads," Damon explained, making another course adjustment. "You don't fight the curves. You lean into them and let momentum carry you through." The colony ship grew larger on their screens, a massive vessel designed to carry 40,000 people to a new world. But now it was helpless, its engines dark and its hull groaning under gravitational stress. Damon could see smaller ships trying desperately to escape in lifeboats, but they were too small and slow to break free of the star's pull. Getting close enough to help required flying deeper into the gravity, well, than any pilot had attempted before. The backup pilot was practically screaming warnings about structural failure and certain death. But Damon had found the rhythm of the gravitational currents, and he rode them like a surfer riding perfect waves. "Now comes the tricky part," he said, bringing their ship alongside the trapped colony vessel. "We can't just grab them and pull. That would tear both ships apart. We need to change their trajectory gradually, help them find their own way out. Using the ship's tractor beams like delicate tools, Damon began nudging the colony ship into a different orbital path. Instead of pulling straight up against the star's gravity, he guided them into a spiral course that would gradually carry them away from danger. The rescue took 3 hours of careful maneuvering, but eventually both ships were climbing out of gravity well together. The colony ship's captain came on the radio with tears in his voice, thanking them for 40,000 lives saved. But the real surprise came during their journey back to Earth. The alien instruments showed that Damon's unconventional flying had somehow improved their ship's efficiency by 30%. His gentle approach had recalibrated their engines in ways their own engineers had never discovered. News of the rescue spread across the galaxy faster than Damon could have imagined. Within days, reporters from dozens of worlds were camping outside his small garage, wanting interviews with the human mechanic who'd saved 40,000 lives using nothing but intuition and common sense. But while the universe celebrated, Damon was more concerned about Maya's upcoming spelling test and whether he'd remembered to buy milk for cereal. "Dad, there's a lady with purple skin on TV talking about you." Maya called from the small office behind his workshop, where she did homework while he worked on cars. "That's nice, sweetheart," Damon replied, his head buried under the hood of Mrs. Chen's sedan. "Did you finish your math problems?" The alien leader, who'd insisted Damon call him Corvin instead of his official title, had decided to stay on Earth for a few months. He spent his days in the garage, watching Damon work and asking endless questions about human engineering methods. What fascinated him most wasn't the tools or techniques, but the way Damon approached each broken machine, like it was a unique puzzle with its own personality. "You listen to the engine," Corvin observed one afternoon, his tall blue frame folded awkwardly as he crouched beside Damon under a pickup truck. "Not just with your ears, but with your whole being. Our engineers rely on diagnostic computers and standard procedures, but you treat each machine as if it's alive." "Well, they kind of are alive," Damon said, adjusting a belt tensioner. "Every engine has its own quirks, its own way of telling you what's wrong. This truck here sounds different from the one we worked on yesterday, even though they're the same make and model. You got to pay attention to what makes each one special." Word was spreading through alien communication networks about the human mechanic who performed an impossible rescue. But it wasn't the heroic piloting that caught everyone's attention. It was the approach itself. Damon had succeeded where advanced technology failed because he understood something the sophisticated civilizations had forgotten. Every problem, no matter how complex, followed basic principles of physics and common sense. Ships started arriving quietly at the Detroit spaceport, their crews hoping to consult with a famous human engineer. Not big, official vessels like Corvin's ship, but smaller craft with problems their own mechanics couldn't solve. A trader from the Andromeda sector, whose cargo hauler made strange vibrations. A family transport whose life support systems kept failing at random intervals. A mining ship whose excavation equipment worked perfectly in simulations, but failed constantly in the field. Damon found himself spending mornings in his garage working on regular cars, and afternoons helping solve problems that stumped some of the galaxy's smartest engineers. The solutions were usually embarrassingly simple: a clogged filter here, a loose connection there, or someone using the wrong approach entirely. "The mining equipment keeps breaking because you're using it like a precision instrument," he explained to a frustrated alien mining foreman. "But mining isn't precise work. Your machines are designed to be tough, not delicate. Stop babying them and let them do what they're built for." Maya became the unofficial ambassador to their alien visitors, offering them juice boxes and asking the kind of innocent questions that often led to breakthrough insights. "Why do you make your ships so shiny?" she asked the sleek vessel's captain one day. "Shiny things get dirty faster and show every little scratch." The captain admitted they'd never considered that their polished hulls required constant maintenance and actually reduced efficiency. Within a week, he'd switched to a matte finish that looked better and performed better. The real change came gradually as stories spread from ship to ship and world to world. The human mechanic didn't just fix problems. He taught beings to think differently about their technology. Instead of relying on complex solutions and advanced diagnostics, Maybe the answer was to step back and understand how things actually worked. Evenings were still sacred family time. No matter how many alien ships waited outside, or how many intergalactic problems needed solving, Damon always locked up the garage at 6 o'clock to help Maya with homework and cook dinner. They'd sit at their small kitchen table, talking about her day at school, while beings from across the galaxy waited patiently for morning to come. "Are you famous now, Dad?" Maya asked one evening, looking out the window at a line of exotic spacecraft parked along their street. "I guess so," Damon replied, helping her with a particularly tricky division problem. But famous doesn't mean much if you forget what's really important. The story that started as a joke, the idea that a simple mechanic could pilot an advanced alien spacecraft, had become something much bigger. When civilizations across the galaxy faced truly impossible problems, they no longer looked for the most advanced technology or the most sophisticated solutions. They looked for someone who understood that every machine, no matter how alien or complex, still followed the same basic rules. Someone who could listen carefully, think simply, and find the path of least resistance through any problem. And in a small garage in Detroit, that someone was teaching his daughter to change oil and adjust carburetors, passing down humanity's greatest gift: the ability to solve complex problems with patience, common sense, and the willingness to get your hands dirty. The universe had learned that sometimes the most advanced solution is also the simplest one.